Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 1, Hadith number 1 narrated by Umar bin al-Khattab, I heard Allah's Apostle saying, the reward of deeds depends upon the intentions and every person will get the reward according to what he has intended. So whoever emigrated for worldly benefits or for a woman to marry, his emigration was for what he emigrated for. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 1, Hadith number 2 narrated by Aisha, the mother of the faithful believers, Al-Harith bin Hisham asked Allah's Apostle, O Allah's Apostle, how is the divine inspiration revealed to you? Allah's Apostle replied, sometimes it is revealed, like the ringing of a bell. This form of inspiration is the hardest of all, and then the state passes off after I have grasped what is inspired. Sometimes the angel comes in the form of a man and talks to me and I grasp whatever he says. Aisha added, verily I saw the Prophet being inspired divinely on a very cold day and noticed the sweat dropping from his forehead, as the inspiration was over. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 1, Hadith number 3 narrated by Aisha, the mother of the faithful believers, the commencement of the divine inspiration to Allah's Apostle was in the form of good dreams which came true like bright day light, and then the love of seclusion was bestowed upon him. He used to go in seclusion in the cave of Hira where he used to worship Allah alone, continuously for many days before his desire to see his family. He used to take with him the journey food for the stay and then come back to his wife, Khadija, to take his food likewise again till suddenly the truth descended upon him while he was in the cave of Hira. The angel came to him and asked him to read. The Prophet replied, I do not know how to read. The Prophet added, the angel caught me, forcefully, and pressed me so hard that I could not bear it any more. He then released me and again asked me to read, and I replied, I do not know how to read. Thereupon he caught me again and pressed me a second time till I could not bear it any more. He then released me and again asked me to read, but again I replied, I do not know how to read, or what shall I read? Thereupon he caught me for the third time and pressed me, and then released me and said, read in the name of your Lord, who has created all that exists, has created man from a clod. Read. And your Lord is the most generous. 96.1, 96.2, 96.3, Then Allah's Apostle returned with the inspiration and with his heart beating severely. Then he went to Khadija bint Khuwaylid and said, cover me. Cover me. They covered him till his fear was over, and after that he told her everything that had happened and said, I fear that something may happen to me. Khadija replied, never. By Allah, Allah will never disgrace you. You keep good relations with your kith and kin, help the poor and the destitute, serve your guests generously and assist the deserving calamity afflicted ones. Khadija then accompanied him to her cousin Waraka bin Nawfal bin Asad bin Abdul-Uwa, who, during the pre-Islamic period became a Christian and used to write the writing with Hebrew letters. He would write from the Gospel in Hebrew as much as Allah wished him to write. He was an old man and had lost his eyesight. Khadija said to Waraka, listen to the story of your nephew, O my cousin. Waraka asked, O my nephew, what have you seen? Allah's Apostle described whatever he had seen. Waraka said, this is the same one who keeps the secrets, Angel Gabriel, whom Allah had sent to Moses. I wish I were young and could live up to the time when your people would turn you out. Allah's Apostle asked, will they drive me out? Waraka replied in the affirmative and said, anyone, man, who came with something similar to what you have brought was treated with hostility, and if I should remain alive till the day when you will be turned out, then I would support you strongly. But after a few days Waraka died and the divine inspiration was also paused for a while. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah al-Ansari while talking about the period of pause in revelation, reporting the speech of the Prophet: while I was walking, all of a sudden I heard a voice from the sky. I looked up and saw the same angel who had visited me at the cave of Hira sitting on a chair between the sky and the earth. I got afraid of him and came back home and said, "Wrap me in blankets." And then Allah revealed the following holy verses of Quran: O you, i.e. Muhammad, wrapped up in garments, arise and warn the people against Allah's punishment, up to and desert the idols. 74.1-5. After this the revelation started coming strongly, frequently, and regularly. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 1, Hadith number 4, narrated by Said bin Jubair, ibn Abbas, in the explanation of the statement of Allah: Move not your tongue concerning the Quran, to make haste therewith. 75.16. Said Allah's apostle used to bear the revelation with great trouble and used to move his lips, quickly, with the inspiration. Ibn Abbas moved his lips saying, I am moving my lips in front of you, as Allah's apostle used to move his. Said moved his lips saying, I am moving my lips, as I saw Ibn Abbas moving his. Ibn Abbas added, so Allah revealed, move not your tongue concerning the Quran, to make haste therewith. It is for us to collect it and to give you, O Muhammad, the ability to recite it, the Quran. 75.16-17, which means that Allah will make him, the Prophet, remember the portion of the Quran which was revealed at that time by heart and recite it. The statement of Allah, and when we have recited it to you, O Muhammad, through Gabriel, then you follow its Quran recital. 75.18, means listen to it and be silent. Then it is for us, Allah, to make it clear to you. 75.19, means then it is for Allah to make you recite it, and its meaning will be clear by itself through your tongue. Afterwards, Allah's apostle used to listen to Gabriel whenever he came, and after his departure he used to recite it as Gabriel had recited it. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 1, Hadith number 5, narrated by Ibn Abbas, Allah's apostle was the most generous of all the people, and he used to reach the peak in generosity in the month of Ramadan when Gabriel met him. Gabriel used to meet him every night of Ramadan to teach him the Quran. Allah's apostle was the most generous person, even more generous than the strong uncontrollable wind, in readiness and haste to do charitable deeds. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 1, Hadith number 6, narrated by Abdullah bin Abbas, Abu Sufyan bin Harb informed me that Heraclius had sent a messenger to him while he had been accompanying a caravan from Quraysh. They were merchants doing business in Sham, Syria, Palestine, Lebanon, and Jordan, at the time when Allah's apostle had truce with Abu Sufyan and Quraysh infidels. So Abu Sufyan and his companions went to Heraclius at Ilya, Jerusalem. Heraclius called them in the court, and he had all the senior Roman dignitaries around him. He called for his translator who, translating Heraclius's question, said to them, who amongst you is closely related to that man who claims to be a prophet? Abu Sufyan replied, I am the nearest relative to him, amongst the group. Heraclius said, bring him, Abu Sufyan, close to me and make his companions stand behind him. Abu Sufyan added, Heraclius told his translator to tell my companions that he wanted to put some questions to me regarding that man, the prophet, and that if I told a lie they, my companions, should contradict me. Abu Sufyan added, by Allah, had I not been afraid of my companions labeling me a liar, I would not have spoken the truth about the prophet. The first question he asked me about him was, what is his family status amongst you? I replied, he belongs to a good, noble family amongst us. Heraclius further asked, has anybody amongst you ever claimed the same, i.e. to be a prophet, before him? I replied, no. He said, was anybody amongst his ancestors a king? I replied, no. Heraclius asked, do the nobles or the poor follow him? I replied, it is the poor who follow him. He said, are his followers increasing, decreasing, day by day? I replied, they are increasing. He then asked, does anybody amongst those who embrace his religion become displeased and renounce the religion afterwards? I replied, no. Heraclius said, have you ever accused him of telling lies before his claim to be a prophet? I replied, no. Heraclius said, does he break his promises? I replied, no. We are at truce with him, but we do not know what he will do in it. I could not find opportunity to say anything against him except that. Heraclius asked, have you ever had a war with him? I replied, yes. Then he said, what was the outcome of the battles? I replied, sometimes he was victorious and sometimes we. Heraclius said, what does he order you to do? I said, he tells us to worship Allah and Allah alone and not to worship anything along with him, and to renounce all that our ancestors had said. He orders us to pray, to speak the truth, to be chaste and to keep good relations with our kith and kin. Heraclius asked the translator to convey to me the following, I asked you about his family and your reply was that he belonged to a very noble family. In fact, all the apostles come from noble families amongst their respective peoples. I questioned you whether anybody else amongst you claimed such a thing. Your reply was in the negative. If the answer had been in the affirmative, I would have thought that this man was following the previous man's statement. Then I asked you whether any one of his ancestors was a king. Your reply was in the negative, and if it had been in the affirmative, I would have thought that this man wanted to take back his ancestral kingdom. I further asked whether he was ever accused of telling lies before he said what he said, and your reply was in the negative. So I wondered how a person who does not tell a lie about others could ever tell a lie about Allah. I then asked you whether the rich people followed him or the poor. You replied that it was the poor who followed him. And in fact all the apostle have been followed by this very class of people. Then I asked you whether his followers were increasing or decreasing. You replied that they were increasing, and in fact this is the way of true faith, till it is complete in all respects. I further asked you whether there was anybody, who, after embracing his religion, became displeased and discarded his religion. Your reply was in the negative, and in fact this is the sign of true faith, when its delight enters the hearts and mixes with them completely. I asked you whether he had ever betrayed. You replied in the negative, and likewise the apostles never betray. Then I asked you what he ordered you to do. You replied that he ordered you to worship Allah and Allah alone and not to worship anything along with him, and forbade you to worship idols and ordered you to pray, to speak the truth and to be chaste. If what you have said is true, he will very soon occupy this place underneath my feet, and I knew it, from the scriptures, that he was going to appear, but I did not know that he would be from you, and if I could reach him definitely, I would go immediately to meet him, and if I were with him, I would certainly wash his feet. Heraclius then asked for the letter addressed by Allah's apostle, which was delivered by Dihya to the governor of Busra, who forwarded it to Heraclius to read. The contents of the letter were as follows: in the name of Allah the Beneficent, the Merciful, this letter is, from Muhammad the slave of Allah and his apostle, to Heraclius the ruler of Byzantium. Peace be upon him, who follows the right path. Furthermore, I invite you to Islam, and if you become a Muslim you will be safe, and Allah will double your reward, and if you reject this invitation of Islam you will be committing a sin by misguiding your Arisian peasants. and I recite to you Allah's statement. O people of the scripture! Come to a word common to you and us, that we worship none but Allah, and that we associate nothing in worship with Him, and that none of us shall take others as lords beside Allah. Then, if they turn away, say, bear witness that we are Muslims, those who have surrendered to Allah. 3:64, Abu Sufyan then added, when Heraclius had finished his speech and had read the letter, there was a great hue and cry in the royal court. So we were turned out of the court. I told my companions that the question of Ibn Abi Kabsha, the Prophet Muhammad, has become so prominent that even the king of Bani al-Asfar, Byzantium, is afraid of him. Then I started to become sure that he, the Prophet, would be the conqueror in the near future, till I embraced Islam, i.e. Allah guided me to it. The sub-narrator adds, Ibn Natur was the governor of Lya, Jerusalem, and Heraclius was the head of the Christians of Sham. Ibn Natur narrates that once while Heraclius was visiting Ilya, Jerusalem, he got up in the morning with a sad mood. Some of his priests asked him why he was in that mood. Heraclius was a foreteller and an astrologer. He replied, at night when I looked at the stars, I saw that the leader of those who practice circumcision had appeared, become the conqueror. Who are they who practice circumcision? The people replied, except the Jews nobody practices circumcision, so you should not be afraid of them, Jews. Just issue orders to kill every Jew present in the country. While they were discussing it, a messenger sent by the king of Ghassan to convey the news of Allah's apostle to Heraclius was brought in. Having heard the news, he, Heraclius, ordered the people to go and see whether the messenger of Ghassan was circumcised. The people, after seeing him, told Heraclius that he was circumcised. Heraclius then asked him about the Arabs. The messenger replied, Arabs also practice circumcision. After hearing that, Heraclius remarked that sovereignty of the Arabs had appeared. Heraclius then wrote a letter to his friend in Rome, who was as good as Heraclius in knowledge. Heraclius then left for Homs, a town in Syria, and stayed there till he received the reply of his letter from his friend, who agreed with him in his opinion about the emergence of the prophet and the fact that he was a prophet. On that, Heraclius invited all the heads of the Byzantines to assemble in his palace at Homs. When they assembled, he ordered that all the doors of his palace be closed. Then he came out and said, O Byzantines! If success is your desire, and if you seek right guidance and want your empire to remain, then give a pledge of allegiance to this prophet, i.e. embrace Islam. On hearing the views of Heraclius, the people ran towards the gates of the palace like onagers, but found the doors closed. Heraclius realized their hatred towards Islam, and when he lost the hope of their embracing Islam, he ordered that they should be brought back in audience. When they returned, he said, what already said was just to test the strength of your conviction, and I have seen it. The people prostrated before him and became pleased with him, and this was the end of Heraclius's story, in connection with his faith. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 7. Narrated by Ibn Umar, Allah's Apostle said, Islam is based on the following 5 principles. 1. To testify that none has the right to be worshipped but Allah, and Muhammad is Allah's Apostle. 2. To offer the compulsory congregational prayers dutifully and perfectly. 3. To pay zakat, i.e. obligatory charity. 4. To perform hajj, i.e. pilgrimage to Mecca. 5. To observe fast during the month of Ramadan. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 8. Narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, faith, belief, consists of more than 60 branches, i.e. parts. And haya, This term haya covers a large number of concepts which are to be taken together, amongst them are self-respect, modesty, bashfulness, and scruple, etc., is a part of faith. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 9. Narrated by Abdullah bin Amr, the Prophet said, "A Muslim is the one who avoids harming Muslims with his tongue and hands. And a muhajir, emigrant, is the one who gives up, abandons, all what Allah has forbidden." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 10. Narrated by Abu Musa, some people asked Allah's Apostle, whose Islam is the best, i.e., who is a very good Muslim? He replied, one who avoids harming the Muslims with his tongue and hands. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 11. Narrated by Abdullah bin Amr, a man asked the Prophet, what sort of deeds or, what qualities of, Islam are good? The Prophet replied, to feed the poor, and greet those whom you know and those whom you do not know, see Hadith number 27. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 12. Narrated by Anas, the Prophet said, none of you will have faith till he wishes for his, Muslim, brother what he likes for himself. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 13. Narrated by Abu Huraira, Allah's Apostle said, by him in whose hands my life is, none of you will have faith till he loves me more than his father and his children. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 14. Narrated by Anas, the Prophet said none of you will have faith till he loves me more than his father, his children, and all mankind. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 15. Narrated by Anas, the Prophet said, whoever possesses the following three qualities will have the sweetness, delight, of faith. 1. The one to whom Allah and His Apostle becomes dearer than anything else. 2. Who loves a person and he loves him only for Allah's sake. 3. Who hates to revert to atheism, disbelief, as he hates to be thrown into the fire. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 16. Narrated by Anas, the Prophet said, love for the ангիր is a sign of faith and hatred for the ангիր is a sign of hypocrisy. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 17. Narrated by Ubaydah bin as-Samit, who took part in the Battle of Badr and was an Aqab, a person heading a group of 6 persons, on the night of Al-Aqaba pledge, Allah's Apostle said while a group of his companions were around him, swear allegiance to me for 1. Not to join anything in worship along with Allah. 2. Not to steal. 3. Not to commit illegal sexual intercourse. 4. Not to kill your children. 5. Not to accuse an innocent person, to spread such an accusation among people. 6. Not to be disobedient, when ordered, to do good deed. The Prophet added, whoever among you fulfills his pledge will be rewarded by Allah. And whoever indulges in any one of them, except the ascription of partners to Allah, and gets the punishment in this world, that punishment will be an expiation for that sin. And if one indulges in any of them, and Allah conceals his sin, it is up to him to forgive or punish him, in the hereafter. Ubaydah bin as-Samit added, so we swore allegiance for these points to Allah's Apostle. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 18. Narrated by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, Allah's Apostle said, a time will come that the best property of a Muslim will be sheep which he will take on the top of mountains and the places of rainfall, valleys, so as to flee with his religion from afflictions. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 19. Narrated by Aisha, whenever Allah's Apostle ordered the Muslims to do something, he used to order them deeds which were easy for them to do, according to their strength endurance. They said, O Allah's apostle. We are not like you. Allah has forgiven your past and future sins. So Allah's apostle became angry and it was apparent on his face. He said, I am the most Allah-fearing, and know Allah better than all of you do. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 20. Narrated by Anas, the Prophet said, whoever possesses the following three qualities will taste the sweetness of faith. 1. The one to whom Allah and His Apostle become dearer than anything else. 2. Who loves a person and he loves him only for Allah's sake. 3. Who hates to revert to disbelief, atheism, after Allah has brought, saved, him out from it, as he hates to be thrown in fire. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 21. Narrated by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, the Prophet said, when the people of paradise will enter paradise and the people of hell will go to hell, Allah will order those who have had faith equal to the weight of a grain of mustard seed to be taken out from hell. So they will be taken out, but, by then, they will be blackened, charred. Then they will be put in the river of Haya, rain, or Hayat, life. The narrator is in doubt as to which is the right term, and they will revive like a grain that grows near the bank of a flood channel. Don't you see that it comes out yellow and twisted? Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 22. Narrated by Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, Allah's Apostle said, while I was sleeping I saw, in a dream, some people wearing shirts of which some were reaching up to the breasts only while others were even shorter than that. Umar bin al-Khattab was shown wearing a shirt that he was dragging. The people asked, how did you interpret it? What is its interpretation, O Allah's Apostle? He, the Prophet, replied, it is the religion. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 23. Narrated by Abdullah bin Umar, once Allah's Apostle passed by an Ansari man, who was admonishing to his brother regarding Haya. On that Allah's Apostle said, leave him, as Haya is a part of faith. See Hadith number 8. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 24. Narrated by Ibn Umar, Allah's Apostle said, I have been ordered, by Allah, to fight against the people until they testify that none has the right to be worshipped but Allah and that Muhammad is Allah's Apostle, and offer the prayers perfectly and give the obligatory charity. So if they perform that, then they save their lives and property from me except for Islamic laws, and then their reckoning, accounts, will be done by Allah. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 25. Narrated by Abu Huraira, Allah's Apostle was asked, what is the best deed? He replied, to believe in Allah and His Apostle, Muhammad. The questioner then asked, what is the next, in goodness? He replied, to participate in jihad, religious fighting, in Allah's cause. The questioner again asked, what is the next, in goodness? He replied, to perform Hajj, pilgrimage to Mecca, Mabrar, which is accepted by Allah and is performed with the intention of seeking Allah's pleasure only and not to show off and without committing a sin and in accordance with the traditions of the Prophet. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 26. Narrated by Said, Allah's Apostle distributed zakat amongst a group of people while I was sitting there, but Allah's Apostle left a man whom I thought the best of the lot. I asked, O Allah's Apostle, why have you left that person? By Allah, I regard him as a faithful believer. The Prophet commented, or merely a Muslim. I remained quiet for a while, but could not help repeating my question because of what I knew about him. And then asked Allah's Apostle, why have you left so and so? By Allah, he is a faithful believer. The Prophet again said, or merely a Muslim. and I could not help repeating my question because of what I knew about him. Then the Prophet said, O Said, I give to a person while another is dearer to me, for fear that he might be thrown on his face in the fire by Allah. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 27. Narrated by Abdullah bin Amr, a person asked Allah's Apostle, what sort of deeds in or what qualities of Islam are good? He replied, to feed the poor, and greet those whom you know and those whom you don't know. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 28. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, the Prophet said, I was shown the hellfire and that the majority of its dwellers were women who were ungrateful. It was asked, do they disbelieve in Allah? Or are they ungrateful to Allah? He replied, they are ungrateful to their husbands and are ungrateful for the favors and the good, charitable deeds, done to them. If you have always been good, benevolent, to one of them and then she sees something in you, not of her liking, she will say, I have never received any good from you. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 29. Narrated by Al-Marar, at Ar Rabadha I met Abu Dhar who was wearing a cloak, and his slave, too, was wearing a similar one. I asked about the reason for it. He replied, I abused a person by calling his mother with bad names. The Prophet said to me, O Abu Dhar, did you abuse him by calling his mother with bad names? You still have some characteristics of ignorance. Your slaves are your brothers and Allah has put them under your command. So whoever has a brother under his command should feed him of what he eats and dress him of what he wears. Do not ask them, slaves, to do things beyond their capacity, power, and if you do so, then help them. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 30. Narrated by Alanaf bin Qais, while I was going to help this man, Ali ibn Abi Talib, Abu Bakr met me and asked, where are you going? I replied, I am going to help that person. He said, go back for I have heard Allah's Apostle saying, when two Muslims meet each other with their swords, both the murderer as well as the murdered will go to the hellfire. I said, O Allah's Apostle, it is all right for the murderer, but what about the murdered one? Allah's Apostle replied, he surely had the intention to kill his companion. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 31. Narrated by Abdullah, when the following verse was revealed, it is those who believe and confuse not their belief with wrong, worshipping others besides Allah. 6:83, the companions of Allah's Apostle asked, who is amongst us who had not done injustice, wrong? Allah revealed, no doubt, joining others in worship with Allah is a great injustice, wrong, indeed. 31.13. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 32. Narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, the signs of a hypocrite are three. 1. Whenever he speaks, he tells a lie. 2. Whenever he promises, he always breaks it, his promise. 3. If you trust him, he proves to be dishonest. If you keep something as a trust with him, he will not return it. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 33. Narrated by Abdullah bin Amr, the Prophet said, whoever has the following four characteristics will be a pure hypocrite, and whoever has one of the following four characteristics will have one characteristic of hypocrisy unless and until he gives it up. 1. Whenever he is entrusted, he betrays. 2. Whenever he speaks, he tells a lie. 3. Whenever he makes a covenant, he proves treacherous. 4. Whenever he quarrels, he behaves in a very imprudent, evil, and insulting manner. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 34. Narrated by Abu Huraira, Allah's Apostle said, whoever establishes the prayers on the night of Qadr out of sincere faith and hoping to attain Allah's rewards, not to show off, then all his past sins will be forgiven. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 35. Narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, the person who participates in holy battles, in Allah's cause and nothing compels him to do so except belief in Allah and His Apostles, will be recompensed by Allah either with a reward, or booty, if he survives, or will be admitted to paradise, if he is killed in the battle as a martyr. Had I not found it difficult for my followers, then I would not remain behind any Sariya going for jihad, and I would have loved to be martyred in Allah's cause and then made alive, and then martyred and then made alive, and then again martyred in His cause. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 36. Narrated by Abu Huraira, Allah's Apostle said, whoever establishes prayers during the nights of Ramadan faithfully out of sincere faith and hoping to attain Allah's rewards, not for showing off, all his past sins will be forgiven. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 37. Narrated by Abu Huraira, Allah's Apostle said, whoever observes fasts during the month of Ramadan out of sincere faith, and hoping to attain Allah's rewards, then all his past sins will be forgiven. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 38. Narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, religion is very easy, and whoever overburdens himself in his religion will not be able to continue in that way. So you should not be extremists, but try to be near to perfection and receive the good tidings that you will be rewarded, and gain strength by worshipping in the mornings, the nights. See Fath al-Bari, page 102, Vol 1. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 39. Narrated by Al-Bara bin Azib, when the Prophet came to Medina, he stayed first with his grandfathers or maternal uncles from Ангիր. He offered his prayers facing Bayt al-Maqdis, Jerusalem, for 16 or 17 months, but he wished that he could pray facing the Kaaba, at Mecca. The first prayer which he offered facing the Kaaba was the Asr prayer in the company of some people. Then one of those who had offered that prayer with him came out and passed by some people in a mosque who were bowing during their prayers, facing Jerusalem. He said, addressing them, by Allah, I testify that I have prayed with Allah's Apostle facing Mecca, Kaaba. Hearing that, those people changed their direction towards the Kaaba immediately. Jews and the people of the scriptures used to be pleased to see the Prophet facing Jerusalem in prayers, but when he changed his direction towards the Kaaba, during the prayers, they disapproved of it. Al-Bara added, before we changed our direction towards the Kaaba, Mecca, in prayers, some Muslims had died or had been killed, and we did not know what to say about them, regarding their prayers. Allah then revealed, and Allah would never make your faith, prayers, to be lost, i.e. the prayers of those Muslims were valid. 2:143. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 40. Narrated by Abu Huraira, Allah's Apostle said, if any one of you improve, follows strictly, his Islamic religion, then his good deeds will be rewarded 10 times to 700 times for each good deed, and a bad deed will be recorded as it is. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 41. Narrated by Aisha, once the Prophet came while a woman was sitting with me. He said, who is she? I replied, she is so and so, and told him about her excessive praying. He said disapprovingly, do good deeds which is within your capacity, without being overtaxed, as Allah does not get tired of giving rewards, but, surely, you will get tired, and the best deed, act of worship, in the sight of Allah is that which is done regularly. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 42. Narrated by Anas, the Prophet said, whoever said none has the right to be worshipped but Allah and has in his heart good faith, equal to the weight of a barley grain will be taken out of hell. And whoever said, none has the right to be worshipped but Allah and has in his heart good faith, equal to the weight of a wheat grain will be taken out of hell. And whoever said, none has the right to be worshipped but Allah and has in his heart good faith, equal to the weight of an atom will be taken out of hell. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 43. Narrated by Umar bin al-Khattab, once a Jew said to me, O the chief of believers, there is a verse in your holy book which is read by all of you, Muslims, and had it been revealed to us, we would have taken that day, on which it was revealed as a day of celebration. Umar bin al-Khattab asked, which is that verse? The Jew replied, this day I have perfected your religion for you, completed my favor upon you, and have chosen for you Islam as your religion. 5:3, Umar replied, no doubt, we know when and where this verse was revealed to the Prophet. It was Friday and the Prophet was standing at Arafat, i.e. the day of Hajj. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 44. Narrated by Talha bin Ubaydullah, a man from Najd with unkempt hair came to Allah's apostle and we heard his loud voice but could not understand what he was saying, till he came near and then we came to know that he was asking about Islam. Allah's apostle said, you have to offer prayers perfectly 5 times in a day and night, 24 hours. The man asked, is there any more praying? Allah's apostle replied, no, but if you want to offer the nawafil prayers, you can. Allah's apostle further said to him, you have to observe fasts during the month of Ramadan. The man asked, is there any more fasting? Allah's apostle replied, no, but if you want to observe the nawafil fasts, you can. Then Allah's apostle further said to him, you have to pay the zakat, obligatory charity. The man asked, is there anything other than the zakat for me to pay? Allah's apostle replied, no, unless you want to give alms of your own. And then that man retreated saying, by Allah, I will neither do less nor more than this. Allah's apostle said, if what he said is true, then he will be successful, i.e. he will be granted paradise. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 45. Narrated by Abu Huraira, Allah's apostle said, a believer, who accompanies the funeral procession of a Muslim out of sincere faith and hoping to attain Allah's reward and remains with it till the funeral prayer is offered and the burial ceremonies are over, he will return with a reward of 2 qirats. Each qirat is like the size of the Mount Uhud. He who offers the funeral prayer only and returns before the burial, will return with the reward of 1 qirat only. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 46. Narrated by Abdullah, the Prophet said, abusing a Muslim is fusuk, an evil doing, and killing him is kafr, disbelief. Narrated Ubaydah bin as-Samit, Allah's apostle went out to inform the people about the date of the night of decree, al-Qadr, but there happened a quarrel between 2 Muslim men. The Prophet said, I came out to inform you about the date of the night of al-Qadr, but as so and so and so and so quarreled, its knowledge was taken away, I forgot it, and maybe it was better for you. Now look for it in the 7th, the 9th, and the 5th, of the last 10 nights of the month of Ramadan. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 47. Narrated by Abu Huraira, one day while the Prophet was sitting in the company of some people, the angel, Gabriel came and asked, "What is faith?" Allah's apostle replied, "Faith is to believe in Allah, His angels, the meeting with Him, His apostles, and to believe in resurrection." Then he further asked, "What is Islam?" Allah's apostle replied, "To worship Allah alone and none else, to offer prayers perfectly, to pay the compulsory charity, zakat, and to observe fasts during the month of Ramadan." Then he further asked, "What is ihsan, perfection?" Allah's apostle replied, "To worship Allah as if you see Him, and if you cannot achieve the state of devotion, then you must consider that He is looking at you." Then he further asked, "When will the hour be established?" Allah's apostle replied, "The answerer has no better knowledge than the questioner. But I will inform you about its portents. 1. When a slave, lady, gives birth to her master. 2. When the shepherds of black camels start boasting and competing with others in the construction of higher buildings. And the hour is one of 5 things which nobody knows except Allah." The Prophet then recited, "Verily, with Allah alone is the knowledge of the hour." 31-34. Then that man, Gabriel, left, and the Prophet asked his companions to call him back, but they could not see him. Then the Prophet said, "That was Gabriel who came to teach the people their religion." Abu Abdullah said, "He, the Prophet, considered all that as a part of faith." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 48. Narrated by Abdullah bin Abbas, I was informed by Abu Sufyan that Heraclius said to him, "I asked you whether they, followers of Muhammad, were increasing or decreasing. You replied that they were increasing. And in fact, this is the way of true faith till it is complete in all respects. I further asked you whether there was anybody, who, after embracing the Prophet's, religion, Islam, became displeased and discarded it. You replied in the negative, and in fact, this is a sign of true faith. When its delight enters the heart and mixes with them completely, nobody can be displeased with it." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 49. Narrated by An-Nu'man bin Bashir, I heard Allah's apostle saying, "Both legal and illegal things are evident, but in between them there are doubtful, suspicious things, and most of the people have no knowledge about them. So whoever saves himself from these suspicious things saves his religion and his honor. And whoever indulges in these suspicious things is like a shepherd who grazes his animals near the hima, private pasture, of someone else, and at any moment he is liable to get in it. O people! Beware! Every king has a hima, and the hima of Allah on the earth is his illegal, forbidden things. Beware! There is a piece of flesh in the body. If it becomes good, reformed, the whole body becomes good, but if it gets spoiled, the whole body gets spoiled, and that is the heart." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 50. Narrated by Abu Jamra, I used to sit with Ibn Abbas, and he made me sit on his sitting place. He requested me to stay with him in order that he might give me a share from his property. So I stayed with him for 2 months. Once he told me that when the delegation of the tribe of Abdul Qais came to the Prophet asked them, "Who are the people, i.e. you? Or, who are the delegate?" They replied, "We are from the tribe of Rabi'a." Then the Prophet said to them, "Welcome, O people, or O delegation of Abdul Qais. Neither will you have disgrace nor will you regret." They said, "O Allah's apostle, we cannot come to you except in the sacred month, and there is the infidel tribe of Madar intervening between you and us. So please order us to do something good, religious deeds, so that we may inform our people whom we have left behind, at home, and that we may enter paradise, by acting on them." Then they asked about drinks, what is legal and what is illegal. The Prophet ordered them to do 4 things and forbade them from 4 things. He ordered them to believe in Allah alone and asked them, do you know what is meant by believing in Allah alone? They replied, Allah and His Apostle know better. Thereupon the Prophet said, it means 1. To testify that none has the right to be worshipped but Allah and Muhammad is Allah's Apostle. 2. To offer prayers perfectly. 3. To pay the zakat, obligatory charity. 4. To observe fast during the month of Ramadan. 5. And to pay al-khumus, 1/5 of the booty to be given in Allah's cause. Then he forbade them 4 things, namely, hantam, dubba, nacheinander and musafat or mukayyar. These were the names of pots in which alcoholic drinks were prepared. The Prophet mentioned the container of wine and he meant the wine itself. The Prophet further said, to them memorize them, these instructions, and convey them to the people whom you have left behind. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 51. Narrated by Umar bin al-Khattab, Allah's Apostle said, the reward of deeds depends upon the intention and every person will get the reward according to what he has intended. So whoever emigrated for Allah and His Apostle, then his emigration was for Allah and His Apostle. And whoever emigrated for worldly benefits or for a woman to marry, his emigration was for what he emigrated for. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 52. Narrated by Abu Mas'udi, the Prophet said, if a man spends on his family, with the intention of having a reward from Allah, sincerely for Allah's sake, then it is a kind of almsgiving in reward for him. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 53. Narrated by Sa'id bin Abi Waqqas, Allah's Apostle said, you will be rewarded for whatever you spend for Allah's sake even if it were a morsel which you put in your wife's mouth. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 54. Narrated by Jarir bin Abdullah, I gave the pledge of allegiance to Allah's Apostle for the following. 1. Offer prayers perfectly. 2. Pay the zakat. Obligatory charity. 3. And be sincere and true to every Muslim. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 2, Hadith number 55. Narrated by Ziyad bin Ilaika, I heard Jarir bin Abdullah, praising Allah. On the day when Al-Mughira bin Shubayh died, he, Jarir, got up, on the pulpit, and thanked and praised Allah and said, be afraid of Allah alone who has none along with Him to be worshipped. You should be calm and quiet till the new chief comes to you, and he will come to you soon. Ask Allah's forgiveness for your late chief because he himself loved to forgive others. Jarir added, Amma Ba'du, now then, I went to the Prophet and said, I give my pledge of allegiance to you for Islam. The Prophet conditioned my pledge for me to be sincere and true to every Muslim, so I gave my pledge to him for this. By the Lord of this mosque, I am sincere and true to you, Muslims. Then Jarir asked for Allah's forgiveness and came down from the pulpit. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 56. Narrated by Abu Huraira, while the Prophet was saying something in a gathering, a Bedouin came and asked him, when would the hour, doomsday, take place? Allah's Apostle continued his talk, so some people said that Allah's Apostle had heard the question, but did not like what that Bedouin had asked. Some of them said that Allah's Apostle had not heard it. When the Prophet finished his speech, he said, where is the questioner, who inquired about the hour, doomsday? The Bedouin said, I am here, O Allah's Apostle. Then the Prophet said, when honesty is lost, then wait for the hour, doomsday. The Bedouin said, how will that be lost? The Prophet said, when the power or authority comes in the hands of unfit persons, then wait for the hour, doomsday. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 57. Narrated by Abdullah bin Amr, once the Prophet remained behind us in a journey. He joined us while we were performing ablution for the prayer which was overdue. We were just passing wet hands over our feet, and not washing them properly, so the Prophet addressed us in a loud voice and said twice or thrice, "Save your heels from the fire." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 58. Narrated by Ibn Umar, Allah's Apostle said, "Amongst the trees, there is a tree, the leaves of which do not fall and is like a Muslim. Tell me the name of that tree." Everybody started thinking about the trees of the desert areas. And I thought of the date palm tree but felt shy to answer the others, then asked, "What is that tree, O Allah's Apostle?" He replied, "It is the date palm tree." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 59. Narrated by Ibn Umar, the Prophet said, "Amongst the trees, there is a tree, the leaves of which do not fall and is like a Muslim. Tell me the name of that tree." Everybody started thinking about the trees of the desert areas. And I thought of the date palm tree. The others then asked, "Please inform us what is that tree, O Allah's Apostle?" He replied, "It is the date palm tree." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 60. Narrated by Ibn Umar, same as above Hadith 59. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 61. Narrated by Ibn Umar, same as above Hadith 59. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 62. Narrated by Ibn Umar, same as above Hadith 59. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 63. Narrated by Anas bin Malik, while we were sitting with the Prophet in the mosque, a man came riding on a camel. He made his camel kneel down in the mosque, tied its foreleg and then said, "Who amongst you is Muhammad?" At that time the Prophet was sitting amongst us, his companions, leaning on his arm. We replied, "This white man reclining on his arm." The and then addressed him, "O son of Abdul Muttalib." The Prophet said, "I am here to answer your questions." The man said to the Prophet, "I want to ask you something and will be hard in questioning. So do not get angry." The Prophet said, "Ask whatever you want." The man said, "I ask you by your Lord, and the Lord of those who were before you, has Allah sent you as an apostle to all the mankind?" The Prophet replied, "By Allah, yes." The man further said, "I ask you by Allah. Has Allah ordered you to offer 5 prayers in a day and night, 24 hours, He replied, "By Allah, yes." The man further said, "I ask you by Allah. Has Allah ordered you to observe fasts during this month of the year, i.e. Ramadan?" He replied, "By Allah, yes." The man further said, "I ask you by Allah. Has Allah ordered you to take zakat, obligatory charity, from our rich people and distribute it amongst our poor people?" The Prophet replied, "By Allah, yes." Thereupon that man said, "I have believed in all that with which you have been sent, and I have been sent by my people as a messenger, and I am Damam bin Thalaba from the brothers of Bani Asad bin Bakr." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 64. Narrated by Abdullah bin Abbas, once Allah's Apostle gave a letter to a person and ordered him to go and deliver it to the governor of Bahrain. He did so, and the governor of Bahrain sent it to Jos Rose, who read that letter and then tore it to pieces. The sub-narrator, Ibn Shihab, thinks that Ibn al-Musayyib said that Allah's Apostle invoked Allah against them, saying, "May Allah tear them into pieces, and disperse them all totally." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 65. Narrated by Anas bin Malik, once the Prophet wrote a letter or had an idea of writing a letter. The Prophet was told that they, rulers, would not read letters unless they were sealed. So the Prophet got a silver ring made with Muhammad Allah's apostle engraved on it. As if I were just observing its white glitter in the hand of the Prophet. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 66. Narrated by Abu Waqid al-Laythi, while Allah's apostle was sitting in the mosque with some people, 3 men came. 2 of them came in front of Allah's apostle and the third one went away. The 2 persons kept on standing before Allah's apostle for a while, and then one of them found a place in the circle and sat there while the other sat behind the gathering, and the third one went away. When Allah's apostle finished his preaching, he said, "Shall I tell you about these 3 persons?" One of them betook himself to Allah, so Allah took him into his grace and mercy and accommodated him. The second felt shy from Allah, so Allah sheltered him in his mercy, and did not punish him, while the third turned his face from Allah and went away, so Allah turned his face from him likewise. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 67. Narrated by Abdurrahman bin Abi Bakr's father, once the Prophet was riding his camel and a man was holding its rein. The Prophet asked, "What is the day today?" We kept quiet, thinking that he might give that day another name. He said, "Isn't it the day of nahr, slaughtering of the animals of sacrifice?" We replied, "Yes." He further asked, "Which month is this?" We again kept quiet, thinking that he might give it another name. Then he said, "Isn't it the month of Dhul Hijjah?" We replied, "Yes." He said, "Verily, your blood, property, and honor are sacred to one another, i.e. Muslims, like the sanctity of this day of yours, in this month of yours and in this city of yours. It is incumbent upon those who are present to inform those who are absent, because those who are absent might comprehend what I have said better than the present audience." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 68. Narrated by Ibn Mas'ud, the Prophet used to take care of us in preaching by selecting a suitable time, so that we might not get bored. He abstained from pestering us with sermons and knowledge all the time. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 69. Narrated by Anas bin Malik, the Prophet said, "Facilitate things to people, concerning religious matters, and do not make it hard for them, and give them good tidings, and do not make them run away from Islam." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 70. Narrated by Abu Wail, Abdullah used to give a religious talk to the people on every Thursday. Once a man said, "O Aba Abdurrahman, by Allah, I wish if you could preach us daily." He replied, "The only thing which prevents me from doing so, is that I hate to bore you, and no doubt I take care of you in preaching by selecting a suitable time, just as the Prophet used to do with us, for fear of making us bored." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 71. Narrated by Muawiyah, I heard Allah's apostle saying, "If Allah wants to do good to a person, he makes him comprehend the religion. I am just a distributor, but the grant is from Allah. And remember, that this nation, true Muslims, will keep on following Allah's teachings strictly, and they will not be harmed by anyone going on a different path till Allah's order, Day of Judgment, is established." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 72. Narrated by Ibn Umar, we were with the Prophet and a spadix of date palm tree was brought to him. On that he said, "Amongst the trees, there is a tree which resembles a Muslim." I wanted to say that it was the date palm tree, but as I was the youngest of all of them, I kept quiet. And then the Prophet said, it is the date palm tree. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 73. Narrated by Abdullah bin Mas'udi, the Prophet said, do not wish to be like anyone except in two cases. The first is, a person, whom Allah has given wealth and he spends it righteously. The second is, the one whom Allah has given wisdom, the Holy Quran, and he acts according to it and teaches it to others. Fatha al-Bari page 177 Volume 1. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 74. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, that he differed with her bin Qais bin Hisn al-Fazari regarding the companion of the Prophet, Moses. Ibn Abbas said that he was Qatar. Meanwhile, Ubay bin Ka'b passed by them and Ibn Abbas called him, saying, my friend, her, and I have differed regarding Moses' companion whom Moses asked the way to meet. Have you heard the Prophet mentioning something about him? He said, yes. I heard Allah's apostle saying, while Moses was sitting in the company of some Israelites, a man came and asked him, do you know anyone who is more learned than you? Moses replied, no. So Allah sent the divine inspiration to Moses, yes, our slave Qatar is more learned than you. Moses asked Allah, how to meet him, Qatar? So Allah made the fish as a sign for him, and he was told that when the fish was lost, he should return to the place where he had lost it, and there he would meet him, al-Qatar. So Moses went on looking for the sign of the fish in the sea. The servant boy of Moses said to him, do you remember when we betook ourselves to the rock? I indeed forgot the fish, none but Satan made me forget to remember it. On that Moses said, that is what we have been seeking? 18.64, so they went back retracing their footsteps, and found Qatar. And, what happened further to them is narrated in the Holy Quran by Allah. 18.54 up to 18.82. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 75. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, once the Prophet embraced me and said, O Allah, bestow on him the knowledge of the book, Quran. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 76. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, once I came riding a she-ass and had, just, attained the age of puberty. Allah's apostle was offering the prayer at Mina. There was no wall in front of him, and I passed in front of some of the row while they were offering their prayers. There I let the she-ass loose to graze and entered the row, and nobody objected to it. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 77. Narrated by Mahmud bin Rabi'a, when I was a boy of 5, I remember, the Prophet took water from a bucket, used for getting water out of a well, with his mouth and threw it on my face. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 78. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, that he differed with her bin Qais bin Hisn al-Fazari regarding the companion of the Prophet Moses. Meanwhile, Ubay bin Ka'b passed by them, and Ibn Abbas called him, saying, my friend, her, and I have differed regarding Moses' companion whom Moses asked the way to meet. Have you heard Allah's apostle mentioning something about him? Ubay bin Ka'b said, yes, I heard the Prophet mentioning something about him, saying, while Moses was sitting in the company of some Israelites, a man came and asked him, do you know anyone who is more learned than you? Moses replied, no. So Allah sent the divine inspiration to Moses, yes, our slave Qatar is more learned than you. Moses asked Allah how to meet him, al-Qatar. So Allah made the fish a sign for him, and he was told when the fish was lost, he should return to the place where he had lost it, and there he would meet him, al-Qatar. So Moses went on looking for the sign of the fish in the sea. The servant boy of Moses said, "Do you remember when we betook ourselves to the rock? I indeed forgot the fish, none but Satan made me forget to remember it." On that Moses said, "That is what we have been seeking." So they went back retracing their footsteps, and found Qadir, and what happened further about them is narrated in the Holy Quran by Allah. 18.54 up to 18.82. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 79. Narrated by Abu Musa, the Prophet said, "The example of guidance and knowledge with which Allah has sent me is like abundant rain falling on the earth, some of which was fertile soil that absorbed rainwater and brought forth vegetation and grass in abundance. And another portion of it was hard and held the rainwater, and Allah benefited the people with it, and they utilized it for drinking, making their animals drink from it, and for irrigation of the land for cultivation. And a portion of it was barren, which could neither hold the water nor bring forth vegetation, then that land gave no benefits." The first is the example of the person who comprehends Allah's religion and gets benefit from the knowledge which Allah has revealed through me, the prophets, and learns and then teaches others. The last example is that of a person who does not care for it and does not take Allah's guidance revealed through me, he is like that barren land. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 80. Narrated by Anas, Allah's Apostle said, "From among the portents of the hour are the following. 1. Religious knowledge will be taken away by the death of religious learned men. 2. Religious ignorance will prevail. 3. Drinking of alcoholic drinks will be very common. 4. There will be prevalence of open illegal sexual intercourse." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 81. Narrated by Anas, "I will narrate to you a hadith, and none other than I will tell you about after it. I heard Allah's Apostle saying, from among the portents of the hour are the following. 1. Religious knowledge will decrease by the death of religious learned men. 2. Religious ignorance will prevail. 3. There will be prevalence of open illegal sexual intercourse. 4. Women will increase in number and men will decrease in number, so much so that 50 women will be looked after by one man." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 82. Narrated by Ibn Umar, Allah's Apostle said, "While I was sleeping, I saw that a cup full of milk was brought to me, and I drank my fill till I noticed the milk, its wetness coming out of my nails. Then I gave the remaining milk to Umar ibn al-Khattab." The companions of the Prophet asked, "What have you interpreted about this dream?" "O Allah's Apostle," he replied, "it is religious knowledge." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 83. Narrated by Abdullah bin Amr bin al-As, Allah's Apostle stopped for a while near the Jamar at Mina during his last Hajj for the people, and they were asking him questions. A man came and said, "I forgot and got my head shaved before slaughtering the hadi, sacrificing animal. The Prophet said, 'There is no harm, go and do the slaughtering now.' Then another person came and said, 'I forgot and slaughtered the camel before Rami, throwing of the pebbles at the Jamra.' The Prophet said, 'Do the Rami now and there is no harm.'" The narrator added, "So on that day, when the Prophet was asked about anything, as regards the ceremonies of Hajj, performed before or after its due time, his reply was, 'Do it now, and there is no harm.'" Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 84. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, somebody said to the Prophet, during his last Hajj, "I did the slaughtering before doing the Rami." The Prophet beckoned with his hand and said, "There is no harm in that." Then another person said, I got my head shaved before offering the sacrifice. The Prophet beckoned with his hand saying, there is no harm in that. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 85. Narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, religious knowledge will be taken away by the death of religious scholars, ignorance in religion, and afflictions will appear, and harj will increase. It was asked, what is harj, O Allah's Apostle? He replied by beckoning with his hand indicating killing. Fatha al-Bari page 192, Volume 1. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 86. Narrated by Asma, I came to Aisha while she was praying, and said to her, what has happened to the people? She pointed out towards the sky. I looked towards the mosque, and saw the people offering the prayer. Aisha said, Subhanallah. I said to her, is there a sign? She nodded with her head meaning, yes. I, too, then stood, for the prayer of eclipse, till I became, nearly, unconscious and later on I poured water on my head. After the prayer, the Prophet praised and glorified Allah and then said, just now at this place I have seen what I have never seen before, including paradise and hell. No doubt it has been inspired to me that you will be put to trials in your graves, and these trials will be like the trials of Masih ad-Dajjal or nearly like it. The sub-narrator is not sure which expression Asma used. You will be asked, what do you know about this man, the Prophet Muhammad? Then the faithful believer, or Asma said a similar word, will reply, he is Muhammad, Allah's apostle who had come to us with clear evidences and guidance, and so we accepted his teachings and followed him. And he is Muhammad. And he will repeat it thrice. Then the angels will say to him, sleep in peace, as we have come to know that you were a faithful believer. On the other hand, a hypocrite or a doubtful person will reply, I do not know, but I heard the people saying something and so I said it. The same. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 87. Narrated by Abu Jamra, I was an interpreter between the people and Ibn Abbas. Once Ibn Abbas said that a delegation of the tribe of Abdul Qais came to the Prophet, who asked them, who are the people, i.e. you? Or, who are the delegates? They replied, we are from the tribe of Rabi'a. Then the Prophet said to them, welcome, O people, or said, O delegation, of Abdul Qais. Neither will you have disgrace nor will you regret. They said, we have come to you from a distant place, and there is the tribe of the infidels of Madar intervening between you and us, and we cannot come to you except in the sacred month. So please order us to do something good, religious deeds, and that we may also inform our people whom we have left behind, at home, and that we may enter paradise, by acting on them. The Prophet ordered them to do 4 things, and forbade them from 4 things. He ordered them to believe in Allah alone, the Honorable, the Majestic, and said to them, do you know what is meant by believing in Allah alone? They replied, Allah and his apostle know better. Thereupon the Prophet said, that means to testify that none has the right to be worshipped but Allah, and that Muhammad is his apostle, to offer prayers perfectly, to pay zakat, to observe fasts during the month of Ramadan, and to pay al-Khumus, 1/5 of the booty to be given in Allah's cause. Then he forbade them 4 things, namely ad-duba, hantam, musafat, and ангիր or ангիր. These were the names of pots in which alcoholic drinks used to be prepared. The Prophet further said, memorize them, these instructions, and tell them to the people whom you have left behind. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 88. Narrated by Abdullah bin Abi Malaika, Uqba bin al-Harith said that he had married the daughter of Abi Ayyab bin Aziz. Later on a woman came to him and said, I have suckled, nursed, Uqba and the woman whom he married, his wife, at my breast. Uqba said to her, neither I knew that you have suckled, nursed, me nor did you tell me. Then he rode over to see Allah's apostle at Medina, and asked him about it. Allah's apostle said, how can you keep her as a wife when it has been said, that she is your foster sister? Then Uqba divorced her, and she married another man. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 89. Narrated by Umar, my Ansari neighbor from Bani Umayyah bin Zayd, who used to live at Awala al-Madinah and used to visit the Prophet by turns. He used to go one day and I another day. When I went I used to bring the news of that day regarding the divine inspiration and other things, and when he went, he used to do the same for me. Once my Ansari friend, in his turn, on returning from the Prophet, knocked violently at my door and asked if I was there. I became horrified and came out to him. He said, today a great thing has happened. I then went to Hafsa and saw her weeping. I asked her, did Allah's apostle divorce you all? She replied, I do not know. Then, I entered upon the Prophet and said while standing, have you divorced your wives? The Prophet replied in the negative. On what I said, Allahu Akbar, Allah is greater. See Hadith number 119, Volume 3 for details. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 90. Narrated by Abu Mas'ud al-Ansari, once a man said to Allah's apostle, O Allah's apostle, I may not attend the compulsory congregational prayer because so and so, the Imam, prolongs the prayer when he leads us for it. The narrator added, I never saw the Prophet more furious in giving advice than he was on that day. The Prophet said, O people! Some of you make others dislike good deeds, the prayers. So whoever leads the people in prayer should shorten it, because among them there are the sick, the weak and the needy, having some jobs to do. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 91. Narrated by Zayd bin Khalid al-Juhani, a man asked the Prophet about the picking up of a luqata, fallen lost thing. The Prophet replied, recognize and remember its tying material and its container, and make public announcement about it, for 1 year, then utilize it but give it to its owner if he comes. Then the person asked about the lost camel. On that, the Prophet got angry and his cheeks or his face became red, and he said, you have no concern with it, as it has its water container, and its feet, and it will reach water, and eat the leaves of trees till its owner finds it. The man then asked about the lost sheep. The Prophet replied, it is either for you, for your brother, another person, or for the wolf. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 92. Narrated by Abu Musa, the Prophet was asked about things which he did not like, but when the questioners insisted, the Prophet got angry. He then said to the people, ask me anything you like. A man asked, who is my father? The Prophet replied, your father is Hudhafa. Then another man got up and said, who is my father, O Allah's apostle? He replied, your father is Salim, Mawla, the freed slave, of Shaiba. So when Umar saw that, the anger, on the face of the Prophet, he said, O Allah's apostle, we repent to Allah, are offending you. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 93. Narrated by Anas bin Malik, one day Allah's apostle came out, before the people, and Abdullah bin Hudhafa stood up and asked him, who is my father? The Prophet replied, your father is Hudhafa. The Prophet told them repeatedly, in anger, to ask him anything they liked. Umar knelt down before the Prophet and said thrice, "We accept Allah as our Lord and Islam as our religion and Muhammad as our Prophet." After that the Prophet became silent. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 94. Narrated by Anas, whenever the Prophet asked permission to enter, he knocked the door thrice with greeting, and whenever he spoke a sentence, said a thing, he used to repeat it thrice. See Hadith number 261, Volume 8. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 95. Narrated by Anas, whenever the Prophet spoke a sentence, said a thing, he used to repeat it thrice so that the people could understand it properly from him, and whenever he asked permission to enter, he knocked the door thrice with greeting. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 96. Narrated by Abdullah bin Amr, once Allah's apostle remained behind us in a journey. He joined us while we were performing ablution for the Asr prayer, which was overdue. We were just passing wet hands over our feet, not washing them properly, so the Prophet addressed us in a loud voice and said twice or thrice, "Save your heels from the fire." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 97a. Narrated by Abu Burda's father, Allah's apostle said 3 persons will have a double reward. 1. A person from the people of the scriptures who believed in his prophet, Jesus or Moses, and then believed in the Prophet Muhammad, he has embraced Islam. 2. A slave who discharges his duties to Allah and his master. 3. A master of a woman slave who teaches her good manners and educates her in the best possible way, the religion, and manumits her and then marries her. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 97b. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, once Allah's apostle came out while Bilal was accompanying him. He went towards the women thinking that they had not heard him, i.e. his sermon. So he preached them and ordered them to pay alms. Hearing that, the women started giving alms, some donated their earrings, some gave their rings, and Bilal was collecting them in the corner of his garment. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 98. Narrated by Abu Huraira, I said, "O Allah's apostle, who will be the luckiest person, who will gain your intercession on the day of resurrection?" Allah's apostle said, "O Abu Huraira, I have thought that none will ask me about it before you, as I know your longing for the learning of hadiths. The luckiest person who will have my intercession on the day of resurrection will be the one who said sincerely from the bottom of his heart, none has the right to be worshipped but Allah." And Umar bin Abdul Aziz wrote to Abu Bakr bin Hazm, "Look for the knowledge of hadith and get it written, as I am afraid that religious knowledge will vanish and the religious learned men will pass away, die. Do not accept anything save the hadiths of the Prophet. Circulate knowledge and teach the ignorant, for knowledge does not vanish except when it is kept secretly, to oneself." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 99. Narrated by Abdullah ibn Dinar, also narrates the same, above-mentioned statement, as has been narrated by Umar bin Abdul Aziz up to the religious scholar, learned men, will pass away, die. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 100. Narrated by Abdullah bin Amr bin al-Az, I heard Allah's apostle saying, Allah does not take away the knowledge, by taking it away from the hearts of the people, but takes it away by the death of the religious learned men, till when none of the religious learned men remains, people will take as their leaders ignorant persons who when consulted will give their verdict without knowledge. So they will go astray and will lead the people astray. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 101. Narrated by Abu Said al-Khudri, some women requested the Prophet to fix a day for them as the men were taking all his time. On that he promised them one day for religious lessons and commandments. Once during such a lesson the Prophet said, "A woman whose 3 children die will be shielded by them from the hell fire." On that a woman asked, "If only 2 die?" He replied, "Even 2, will shield her from the hell fire." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 102. Narrated by Abu Said al-Khudri, as above, the sub-narrators are different. Abu Hurairah qualified the 3 children referred to in the above-mentioned hadith as not having reached the age of committing sins, i.e. age of puberty. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 103. Narrated by Ibn Abu Malaika, whenever Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, heard anything which she did not understand, she used to ask again till she understood it completely. Aisha said, once the Prophet said, "Whoever will be called to account, about his deeds on the day of resurrection, will surely be punished." I said, "Doesn't Allah say, he surely will receive an easy reckoning?" 84.8, the Prophet replied, "This means only the presentation of the accounts, but whoever will be argued about his account, will certainly be ruined." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 104. Narrated by Said, Abu Shurayh said, when Amr bin Said was sending the troops to Mecca, to fight Abdullah bin Zubayr, I said to him, "O chief, allow me to tell you what the Prophet said on the day following the conquests of Mecca." My ears heard and my heart comprehended, and I saw him with my own eyes, when he said it. He glorified and praised Allah and then said, "Allah and not the people has made Mecca a sanctuary." So, anybody who has belief in Allah and the last day, i.e. a Muslim, should neither shed blood in it nor cut down its trees. If anybody argues that fighting is allowed in Mecca as Allah's apostle did fight in Mecca, tell him that Allah gave permission to his apostle, but he did not give it to you. The Prophet added, Allah allowed me only for a few hours on that day of the conquest, and today, now, its sanctity is the same, valid, as it was before. So it is incumbent upon those who are present to convey it, this information, to those who are absent. Abu Shurayh was asked, what did Amr reply? He said, Amr said, "O Abu Shurayh, I know better than you, in this respect. Mecca does not give protection to one who disobeys Allah, or runs after committing murder or theft and takes refuge in Mecca." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 105. Narrated by Abu Bakr, the Prophet said, "No doubt your blood, property," the sub-narrator Muhammad thought that Abu Bakr had also mentioned, "and your honor, chastity, are sacred to one another as is the sanctity of this day of yours in this month of yours." It is incumbent on those who are present to inform those who are absent. Muhammad the sub-narrator used to say, Allah's apostle told the truth. The Prophet repeated twice, "No doubt. Haven't I conveyed Allah's message to you?" Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 106. Narrated by Ali, the Prophet said, "Do not tell a lie against me, for whoever tells a lie against me, intentionally, then he will surely enter the hell fire." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 107. Narrated by Abdullah bin Zubayr, I said to my father, I do not hear from you any narration, hadith, of Allah's apostle as I hear his narrations, from so and so. Zubayr replied, I was always with him, the Prophet, and I heard him saying, whoever tells a lie against me, intentionally, then, surely, let him occupy his seat in hellfire. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 108. Narrated by Anas, the fact which stops me from narrating a great number of hadiths to you is that the Prophet said, whoever tells a lie against me intentionally, then, surely, let him occupy his seat in hellfire. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 109. Narrated by Salama, I heard the Prophet saying, whoever, intentionally, ascribes to me what I have not said, then, surely, let him occupy his seat in hellfire. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 110. Narrated by Abu Huraira, the Prophet said, name yourselves with my name, use my name, but do not name yourselves with my kunya name, i.e. Abu al-Qasim. And whoever sees me in a dream, then surely he has seen me, for Satan cannot impersonate me. And whoever tells a lie against me, intentionally, then, surely, let him occupy his seat in hellfire. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 111. Narrated by Ash-Shabi, Abu Juhayfa said, I asked Ali, have you got any book which has been revealed to the Prophet apart from the Quran? Ali replied, no, except Allah's book, or the power of understanding which has been bestowed, by Allah, upon a Muslim, or what is written in this sheet of paper, with me. Abu Juhayfa said, I asked, what is written in this sheet of paper? Ali replied, it deals with the diyah, compensation, blood money, paid by the killer to the relatives of the victim, the ransom for the releasing of the captives from the hands of the enemies, and the law that no Muslim should be killed in qisas, equality in punishment. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 111. Narrated by Ash-Shabi, Abu Juhayfa said, I asked Ali, have you got any book which has been revealed to the Prophet apart from the Quran? Ali replied, no, except Allah's book, or the power of understanding which has been bestowed, by Allah, upon a Muslim, or what is written in this sheet of paper, with me. Abu Juhayfa said, I asked, what is written in this sheet of paper? Ali replied, it deals with the diyah, compensation, blood money, paid by the killer to the relatives of the victim, the ransom for the releasing of the captives from the hands of the enemies, and the law that no Muslim should be killed in qisas, equality in punishment, for the killing of a disbeliever. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 112. Narrated by Abu Huraira, in the year of the conquest of Mecca, the tribe of Huzayh killed a man from the tribe of Bani Layth in revenge for a killed person belonging to them. They informed the Prophet about it. So he rode his rahila, she-camel for riding, and addressed the people saying, Allah held back the killing from Mecca. The sub-narrator is in doubt whether the Prophet said elephant or killing, as the Arabic words standing for these words have great similarity in shape, but he, Allah, let his apostle and the believers overpower the infidels of Mecca. Beware! Mecca is a sanctuary, verily. Fighting in Mecca was not permitted for anyone before me, nor will it be permitted for anyone after me. War, in it was made legal for me for few hours or so on that day. No doubt it is at this moment a sanctuary. It is not allowed to uproot its thorny shrubs, or to uproot its trees, or to pick up its fallen things, except by a person who will look for its owner, announce it publicly. And if somebody is killed, then his closest relative has the right to choose one of the two, the blood money, diyah, or retaliation having the killer killed. In the meantime a man from Yemen came and said, O Allah's apostle, get that written for me. The Prophet ordered his companions to write that for him. Then a man from Quraysh said, "Accept ангիր, a type of grass that has good smell, O Allah's apostle, as we use it in our houses and graves." The Prophet said, "Accept ангир. Ангир is allowed to be plucked." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 113. Narrated by Abu Huraira, there is none among the companions of the Prophet who has narrated more hadiths than I except Abdullah bin Amr, bin Al-As, who used to write them and I never did the same. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 114. Narrated by Ubaydullah bin Abdullah, ibn Abbas said, when the ailment of the Prophet became worse, he said, "Bring for me, writing, paper and I will write for you a statement after which you will not go astray." But Umar said, "The Prophet is seriously ill, and we have got Allah's book with us and that is sufficient for us." But the companions of the Prophet differed about this and there was a hue and cry. On that the Prophet said to them, "Go away, and leave me alone. It is not right that you should quarrel in front of me." Ibn Abbas came out saying, "It was most unfortunate, a great disaster, that Allah's apostle was prevented from writing that statement for them because of their disagreement and noise." Note, it is apparent from this hadith that Ibn Abbas had witnessed the event and came out saying this statement. The truth is not so, for Ibn Abbas used to say the statement on narrating the hadith and he had not witnessed the event personally. See Fath al-Bari Volume 1, p.220 footnote. See Hadith number 228, Volume 4. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 115. Narrated by Salama, one night Allah's apostle got up and said, "Subhanallah! How many afflictions have been descended tonight and how many treasures have been disclosed. Go and wake the sleeping lady occupants of these dwellings, his wives, up, for prayers. A well-dressed soul, in this world may be naked in the hereafter." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 116. Narrated by Abdullah bin Umar, once the Prophet led us in the Isha prayer during the last days of his life and after finishing it, the prayer, with taslim, he said, "Do you realize the importance of this night? Nobody present on the surface of the earth tonight will be living after the completion of 100 years from this night." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 117. Narrated by Ibn Abbas, I stayed overnight in the house of my aunt Ma'imuna bint al-Harith, the wife of the Prophet, while the Prophet was there with her during her night turn. The Prophet offered the Isha prayer in the mosque, returned home and after having prayed 4 rakat, he slept. Later on he got up at night and then asked whether the boy, or he used a similar word, had slept. Then he got up for the prayer and I stood up by his left side but he made me stand to his right and offered 5 rakat followed by 2 more rakat. Then he slept and I heard him snoring and then, after a while, he left for the Fajr prayer. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 118. Narrated by Abu Huraira, people say that I have narrated many hadiths, the Prophet's narrations. Had it not been for 2 verses in the Quran, I would not have narrated a single hadith, and the verses are: "Verily those who conceal the clear sign and the guidance which we have sent down," up to, "Most Merciful." 2:159-160, and no doubt our muhajir, emigrant, brothers used to be busy in the market with their business, bargains, and our Ansari brothers used to be busy with their property, agriculture. But I, Abu Huraira, used to stick to Allah's apostle contented with what will fill my stomach and I used to attend that which they used not to attend and I used to memorize that which they used not to memorize. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 119. Narrated by Abu Huraira, I said to Allah's Apostle, I hear many narrations, hadiths, from you but I forget them. Allah's Apostle said, spread your rida, garment. I did accordingly, and then he moved his hands as if filling them with something, and emptied them in my rida, and then said, take and wrap this sheet over your body. I did it, and after that I never forgot anything. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 120. Narrated by Ibrahim bin al-Mundhir, Ibn Abi Fudaik narrated the same as above, Hadith 119, but added that the Prophet had moved his hands as if filling them with something, and then he emptied them in the rida of Abu Huraira. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 121. Narrated by Abu Huraira, I have memorized two kinds of knowledge from Allah's Apostle. I have propagated one of them to you, and if I propagated the second, then my pharynx, throat, would be cut, i.e. killed. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 122. Narrated by Jarir, the Prophet said to me during Hajjat al-Wida, let the people keep quiet and listen. Then he said, addressing the people, do not become infidels, revert to disbelief after me by striking the necks, cutting the throats, of one another, killing each other. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 123. Narrated by Said bin Jubair, I said to Ibn Abbas, Naf al-Bakali claims that Moses, the companion of Qatar, was not the Moses of Bani Israel but he was another Moses. Ibn Abbas remarked that the enemy of Allah, Naf, was a liar. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 124. Narrated by Ubay bin Kabi, the Prophet said, once the Prophet Moses stood up and addressed Bani Israel. He was asked, who is the most learned man amongst the people? He said, I am the most learned. Allah admonished Moses as he did not attribute absolute knowledge to him, Allah. So Allah inspired to him, at the junction of the two seas there is a slave amongst my slaves who is more learned than you. Moses said, O my Lord, how can I meet him? Allah said, take a fish in a large basket, and proceed, and you will find him at the place where you will lose the fish. So Moses set out along with his servant, boy, Yusha bin Nun, and carried a fish in a large basket till they reached a rock, where they laid their heads, i.e. lay down, and slept. The fish came out of the basket and it took its way into the sea as in a tunnel. So it was an amazing thing for both Moses and his servant, boy. They proceeded for the rest of that night and the following day. When the day broke, Moses said to his servant, boy, bring us our early meal. No doubt, we have suffered much fatigue in this journey. Moses did not get tired till he passed the place about which he was told. There the servant, boy, told Moses, do you remember when we betook ourselves to the rock? I indeed forgot the fish. Moses remarked, that is what we have been seeking. So they went back retracing their footsteps, till they reached the rock. There they saw a man covered with a garment, or covering himself with his own garment. Moses greeted him. Al-Qatar replied saying, how do people greet each other in your land? Moses said, I am Moses. He asked, the Moses of Bani Israel? Moses replied in the affirmative and added, may I follow you so that you teach me of that knowledge which you have been taught? Al-Qatar replied, verily, you will not be able to remain patient with me, O Moses. I have some of the knowledge of Allah which he has taught me and which you do not know, while you have some knowledge which Allah has taught you which I do not know. Moses said, Allah willing, you will find me patient and I will not disobey you in aught. So both of them set out walking along the seashore, as they did not have a boat. In the meantime, a boat passed by them and they requested the crew of the boat to take them on board. The crew recognized Al-Qatar and took them on board without fare. Then a sparrow came and stood on the edge of the boat and dipped its beak once or twice in the sea. Al-Qatar said, "O Moses, my knowledge and your knowledge have not decreased Allah's knowledge except as much as the sparrow has decreased the water of the sea with its beak." Al-Qatar went to one of the planks of the boat and plucked it out. Moses said, "These people gave us a free lift, but you have broken their boat and scuttled it so as to drown its people." Al-Qatar replied, "Didn't I tell you that you will not be able to remain patient with me?" Moses said, "Call me not to account for what I forgot." The first excuse of Moses was that he had forgotten. Then they proceeded further and found a boy playing with other boys. Al-Qatar took hold of the boy's head from the top and plucked it out with his hands, i.e. killed him. Moses said, "Have you killed an innocent soul who has killed none?" Al-Qatar replied, "Did I not tell you that you cannot remain patient with me?" Then they both proceeded till when they came to the people of a town, they asked them for food, but they refused to entertain them. Then they found there a wall on the point of collapsing. Al-Qatar repaired it with his own hands. Moses said, "If you had wished, surely you could have taken wages for it." Al-Qatar replied, "This is the parting between you and me." The Prophet added, "May Allah be merciful to Moses. Would that he could have been more patient to learn more about his story with Al-Qatar." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 125. Narrated by Abu Musa, a man came to the Prophet and asked, "O Allah's Apostle, what kind of fighting is in Allah's cause?" I ask this, for some of us fight because of being enraged and angry, and some for the sake of his pride and haughtiness. The Prophet raised his head, as the questioner was standing, and said, "He who fights so that Allah's word, Islam, should be superior, then he fights in Allah's cause." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 126. Narrated by Abdullah bin Amr, I saw the Prophet near the Jamra and the people were asking him questions about religious problems. A man asked, "O Allah's Apostle, I have slaughtered the hadi, animal, before doing the rami." The Prophet replied, "Do the rami, now, and there is no harm." Another person asked, "O Allah's Apostle, I got my head shaved before slaughtering the animal." The Prophet replied, "Do the slaughtering, now, and there is no harm." So on that day, when the Prophet was asked about anything as regards the ceremonies of Hajj performed before or after its due time, his reply was, "Do it, now, and there is no harm." Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 127. Narrated by Abdullah, while I was going with the Prophet through the ruins of Medina and he was reclining on a date palm leaf stalk, some Jews passed by. Some of them said to the others, "Ask him, the Prophet, about the Spirit." Some of them said that they should not ask him that question as he might give a reply which would displease them. But some of them insisted on asking, and so one of them stood up and asked, "O Aba al-Qasim, what is the Spirit?" The Prophet remained quiet. I thought he was being inspired divinely. So I stayed till that state of the Prophet, while being inspired, was over. The Prophet then said, "And they ask you, O Muhammad, concerning the Spirit. Say, the Spirit, its knowledge is with my Lord. And of knowledge you, mankind, have been given only a little. 17.85. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 128. Narrated by Aswad, Ibn Zubair said to me, Aisha used to tell you secretly a number of things. What did she tell you about the Kaaba? I replied, she told me that once the Prophet said, O Aisha, had not your people been still close to the pre-Islamic period of ignorance, infidelity? I would have dismantled the Kaaba and would have made 2 doors in it, one for entrance and the other for exit. Later on Ibn Zubair did the same. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 129. Narrated by Abu at-Tufail, the above-mentioned statement of Ali. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 130. Narrated by Anas bin Malik, once Muadh was along with Allah's Apostle as a companion rider. Allah's Apostle said, O Muadh bin Jabal. Muadh replied, Labbaik and Sadiq. O Allah's Apostle. Again the Prophet said, O Muadh. Muadh said thrice, Labbaik and Sadiq, O Allah's Apostle. Allah's Apostle said, there is none who testifies sincerely that none has the right to be worshipped but Allah and Muhammad is his apostle, except that Allah will save him from the hell fire. Muadh said, O Allah's Apostle, should I not inform the people about it so that they may have glad tidings? He replied, when the people hear about it, they will solely depend on it. Then Muadh narrated the above-mentioned hadith just before his death, being afraid of committing sin, by not telling the knowledge. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 131. Narrated by Anas, I was informed that the Prophet had said to Muadh, whosoever will meet Allah without associating anything in worship with him will go to paradise. Muadh asked the Prophet, should I not inform the people of this good news? The Prophet replied, no, I am afraid, lest they should depend upon it, absolutely. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 132. Narrated by Salama, Sulaim came to Allah's Apostle and said, verily, Allah is not shy of telling you the truth. Is it necessary for a woman to take a bath after she has a wet dream, nocturnal sexual discharge? The Prophet replied, yes, if she notices a discharge. Salama then covered her face and asked, O Allah's Apostle, does a woman get a discharge? He replied, yes, let your right hand be in dust, an Arabic expression you say to a person when you contradict his statement, meaning you will not achieve goodness, and that is why the son resembles his mother. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 133. Narrated by Abdullah bin Umar, once Allah's Apostle said, amongst the trees there is a tree, the leaves of which do not fall and is like a Muslim, tell me the name of that tree. Everybody started thinking about the trees of the desert areas and I thought of the date palm tree but felt shy to answer. The others asked, O Allah's Apostle, inform us of it. He replied, it is the date palm tree. I told my father what had come to my mind and on that he said, had you said it I would have preferred it to such and such a thing that I might possess. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 134. Narrated by Ali, I used to get the emotional urethral discharge frequently, so I requested Al-Miqdad to ask the Prophet about it. Al-Miqdad asked him and he replied, one has to perform ablution, after it. See Hadith number 269. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 135. Narrated by Nafi, Abdullah bin Umar said, a man got up in the mosque and said, O Allah's Apostle, at which place you order us that we should assume the ihram? Allah's Apostle replied, the residents of Medina should assure the ihram from Dhul Hulayfa, the people of Syria from Al-Juhfa and the people of Najd from Qarn. Ibn Umar further said, the people consider that Allah's apostle had also said, the residents of Yemen should assume ihram from Yalamlam. Ibn Umar used to say, I do not remember whether Allah's apostle had said the last statement or not. Sahih Bukhari Volume 1, Book 3, Hadith number 136. Narrated by Ibn Umar, a man asked the Prophet, what kinds of clothes should a muhrim, a Muslim intending to perform Umrah or Hajj, wear? He replied, he should not wear a shirt, a turban, trousers, a head cloak or garment scented with saffron or wars, kinds of perfumes. And if he has no slippers, then he can use cuffs, leather socks, but the socks should be cut short so as to make the ankles bare. See Hadith number 615, Volume 2.